Welcome to PolyCast, a civilization podcast focused on game strategy.
CanusAlbinus,
Makahlua,
TheMeInTeam,
MegaBearsFan.
All right, we doing this?
think so. Let's go.
Okay, hello and welcome to PolyCast episode 420. I'm TheMeInTeam and joined by CanusAlbinus.
Someday I'll remember where I left
Makahlua?
my keys. Whoops.
I was about to ask what he was going to remember.
Where I left my keys.
And MegaBearsFan.
Oh my gosh, there's football all year round now. It's weird.
Got an XFL.
Yeah, and the USFL. It's never not football season now.
Oh boy. So much for our intro-outro segment that I didn't actually give a list of.
And the first one here is a doozy. Got a Kotaku article, which maybe says enough on its own. But anyway, I read through this, and best I can tell, the complaints are that games shouldn't be spreadsheets, even though every game inherently is based on numbers, and a subjective dislike for the numbers as they're represented in Civ 6. There's some bold claims in here, like it's the worst mainline game in the series, which is ridiculous.
No.
And that Civ 5 is somehow better. I mean, I guess if you don't like to expand, then Civ 5 is better. But they didn't really talk about that.
I will point out, though, that pretty much every friend that I have that does play Civ did not care for Civ 6 and kept playing Civ 5. So
that happened with 4, too.
There might be... No, I mean, they never got into Civ 6. They still, if they play, are playing Civ 5. So there might be some validity to that particular comment in this retro review. Is it a retro?
You know what? I wonder if that isn't. It's just people get older, right, and more experience with games.
Well, there are also...
Because I don't play any Civ as much as I used to play Civ 4, and it's not even close. That being said, even though I think Civ 4 is objectively better, I think Civ 6 is a good game. I just don't play it that often because I have other games that I'd prefer to play, and I've played the Civ formula so much by now that and it just doesn't hold my attention the same way it might have, 10, 15 years ago.
And Civ 5 was really good, and a lot of people stuck to it just because they liked it better, but that's not necessarily a reflection that says that Civ 6 is bad. It's just not their cup of tea.
Well, and how do you make a game, or how do you say one game is better than the other? What's your criteria there? Depending on what criteria you set, you can say one is objectively better than the other, but that criteria itself is not going to be objectively correct.
And to be fair, after saying almost exclusively negative things about Civ 6 at like the very end of the review, this reviewer is like, "Oh, but Civ 6 is a good game."
Yeah.
So
wow,
without really having much positive to say about it, other than like they liked rock bands.
I just wonder, what about Civ 5 makes people enjoy it more than 6?
Probably the less extensive use of multiple cities, if I want to be honest. I mean, I hate the fact that
districts, I guess.
I really hate that you have to have few cities in Civ 5, but I prefer Civ 5 over Civ 6 anyway. Mostly because there's less things to click on.
And on that same topic, the friends that I do have that are still playing Civ 5 or who never got into Civ 6 did not like Civ 6 because of complaints they had with the way that districts worked.
Okay,
yeah, and that was mentioned in the article as well.
And I'm not sure offhand what their specific complaints were. I don't know if it was just like too much to manage. I think one of the friends that didn't like districts just felt like it was like, how to explain, like just obvious optimal plays. Like there's like one specific place where districts are like it's the best place to put a district, like just mathematically. So it's like it doesn't require very much like thought, and there's not much freedom for the player to really choose how your cities grow. So
that complaint is only valid in the sense that somebody is making that complaint, because the districts, I would show me the person who not only picks the optimal district in every case, but also places each and every single one of the districts they do pick, because you get multiple optimally, I don't believe you. There might be like a couple people in the world capable of that, who like actually really do that game to game. So I've never been a fan of criticisms of things being too simple / too easy / too obvious from players who are just not capable of being anywhere near the optimal they're talking about in the moment they're saying it. It's ridiculous. I hear the same thing about expansion in EU4 from players who've never completed a one-tag World Conquest, and they're saying how expansion's too easy. Well, I mean, if you set your goals shorter, then yes. But if you're really trying to optimize what you're talking about, it's not that easy to do.
I will say that one thing that I consider valid about that complaint is the huge disparity between the player's ability to optimally place districts versus the CPU's ability to optimally place districts. Because especially early in the game, before they've unlocked a lot of tiles, the CPU is very bad about placing districts in good positions, in large part because they don't really think ahead long enough to like, oh, well, if I wait a few turns to annex this other tile, or I buy that tile now, like I'll get twice as much yield from placing this campus. And then they just place the campus like wherever is the best location now, even though it could be way better if they just waited a few turns for another location later. And a human player will do those sorts of things.
Sure, the AI is just bad in every Civ game.
We have a topic about that later.
Yeah, and I mean, like, just at a fundamental level, that this complaint is going to apply to all of them, because the AI is absolutely awful in every single iteration so far.
Yeah, but going back to older civs where all of the infrastructure was stacked in the cities, like that problem isn't as pronounced because the AI only has to choose what infrastructure to build and not where to place it. So
well, sure, but if we're going with this complaint, what was the most crippling thing for the AI's ability to threaten the player ever implemented it in Civ by a wide margin?
Well, I mean, it's the same complaint as removing the stacks from Civ 4 and going to the hex-based 1 unit per tile in Civ 5, where now it's not just a matter of composing the army correctly and ramming the stack into the other player. It's, you also have to position them, and yeah, the AI is not great at that either. So you could make a similar argument about Civ 4 being better than Civ 5 because Civ 5 made it harder for the AI to be competitive militarily.
Yeah, and that's one of only a very few ways a player can lose is getting conquered. The other is for the AI to win a victory condition before you. But
I need to do some customary Kotaku bashing and point out that a full third of the article is all about the writer talking about how he himself doesn't understand why Civilization 6 is a good game. Like literally, we go, okay,
how many paragraphs?
Like the first paragraph I'm talking about, what the hell am I writing about then when I sit down to review one of these games? And he comes to a conclusion 6 paragraphs later. And I can't really find any validity in something like that if it's like a published review, because that's not how you write a review. You're supposed to write about the topic, not about how stupid you are in reading the topic.
I will say that as someone who does write amateur game reviews, I do sympathize with the difficulty inherent in reviewing a game as big and complex as a Civ title or pretty much any grand strategy game, because they take forever to play and they take forever to get a really good understanding of. Like, so there's a really strong push and pull, tug of war between release your review, sometime near the game's release when it's most relevant and useful to people who may be using reviews to decide whether or not to purchase the games, or wait for literal months until you actually feel like you understand the game well enough to do it justice in a review, but at which point, like, nobody cares anymore.
I sympathize with that as well, but that is the kind of thing that I would put in a article on how to write video game reviews and not an article about a specific video game, because that, while interesting in itself, is not relevant to Civ 6. Civ 6 has its own issues, and whether or not some reviewer is decent at figuring out what he thinks about it does not deserve to be 1/3 of the entire game discussion. Because how many things did he talk about in the article that actually has to do with what civilization problems are? Like, then he goes on after the long thing about not figuring out how to do a review. He then talks about how Humankind came out, and he's like, "Oh, that sounds like a cool version of Civ I want to play." And then right after that, he talks about how it's a board game, which we all knew starting out. So basically what I'm seeing is he is complaining that Civ 6 is a board game, and that's the entire point of why he doesn't like it. Because it's the only thing he mentions.
Yeah, aside from needing to calculate.
But then what's also like kind of ironic about that is that he also contrasts it with like Paradox's games like Crusader Kings, which are even more number based, which is his other big complaint about Civ 6, and less like a board game. So I'm like, well, do you like Crusader Kings more, or do you like because it's less of a board game, or do you like Crusader Kings less because it's more just about numbers?
And then there's this particle later on. There's so much about Civilization 6 that I simply don't care about, that exists as a system for a system's sake, and the fact that you can win games on higher difficulties by simply ignoring almost everything I just mentioned says a lot about what they're really adding to the experience. Let's talk about what he just talked about. His own stupidity, other games that he thinks are better than Civ, and placing... And there's a paragraph here about how you have to place your hexes in the right place, or place your districts in the right place. So, apparently district placing is not required for actual good gameplay, according to this.
He also doesn't want to be the math lady meme every time he needs a new harbor, which is like, if you need a harbor, you plunk down a harbor. Most of us playing through a game of Civ are not sitting there and doing the exact math. We're going, that'll help me grow my economy, I'll place a harbor.
In most cases, the math isn't that difficult, too.
I was going to say...
And the game tells you the math. Like, when you go to place a district, it shows a little icon with the numbers. So you just
plus 3, plus 4.
I mean, you could argue that you have to maybe do the predictive math in, when you place, in particular, something like a harbor or like a theater district that is based around adjacent districts, and you don't have those adjacent districts yet. You have to think about, well, what districts will I be placing, and what will the numbers be after those are placed? But
I'm gonna be very clear here. Video games, as defined by the person who we should all take an inspiration from in video gaming, are a series of interesting decisions. That's all they are. If you are no longer required to make a decision when you are playing a game, it no longer is a game. It is a PowerPoint presentation that you're just pushing through the motions. If there's no place to make a decision, there's a problem because you're not enjoying it. You're not doing anything. So this guy says he doesn't want to do the math. Well, that's fine. Go play a game that's less intelligent than. I hear first-person shooters are popular.
Or Civ 5.
Civ 5 also has that board game-esque feel to it, but...
I mean, apparently that wasn't too hard. So.
Apparently not, even though it's based on basically the exact same things. So
yeah, and I'm sitting here saying you don't have to actively do the math as hard as he's trying to imply.
Yeah, well, that's true. You don't have to do anything though. Like, all the choices you make or don't make will influence how you perform in the game. And there's also the question how much you care.
It's like not even all the districts require you to even care about adjacency. Like, a number of them literally don't have any adjacency bonus at all that matters. So
maybe for like your
for your construction or for your industrial districts, your
in the commercial zone and the harbor to some extent, but outside of that, campuses. You want massive
theater squares,
yeah. A handful of them need it. The rest of them, just plunk it over there.
Cultural ones
doesn't matter.
Cultural ones are so difficult for me in my lower intelligence state anyway that I just tend
to even get any adjacencies for the cultural ones sometimes, unless you're a specific Civ.
And I generally find that I don't really need adjacency for culture stuff. Although I will put wonders next to cultural districts because that's where they ought to be. But other than that, I mean, who cares? And science isn't even that hard either unless you're a specific Civ. Just put it next to mountains or natural wonders. There are very specific things that you can do to fix these problems in your own head without being the math lady. Because if you want to know the math lady meme, try figuring out, I don't know, how about foreign trade routes in Civ 4?
Now, there are a handful of very specific complaints in this that I actually do think are astute. One of them is the World Congress is an absolute chore to click through.
Yes.
We'll give him that. And the World Congress is definitely a downgrade compared to what it was in Civ 5.
Absolutely.
For sure.
That is 100% true.
Yeah, the entire civics concept is great on paper, but is just another thing that I click straight through. I will give him kind of half credit for that because, like, most of the civics don't do a whole lot for you. In a lot of games, you're just kind of powering through the civics to get through the next government or like that one particular policy that you really want. And there's not a whole lot more on that tree that you need.
That is only true if you are not playing a specialized build or playing at a lower level. Because a lot of the civics cards, they seem really, like for instance, when I play, I always use the same ones because I don't like to think about it. That is me playing badly, and I understand that. But if you want to play highly efficiency, you want to do the stuff that the game can do, all of those cards are useful in some situations. So having the ability to switch into them is just an extra option that you have, and I don't generally have a problem with extra options you don't necessarily need in all cases.
Sure, yeah. But I mean, the core problem is that, like, in any given game, you still have to research all the civics, and like, maybe 3/4 of them give you things that you're never going to use in that particular game. So it's like, it kind of feels like blah.
It's better than any other civic system we've had because it does allow you to retool and switch on a dime if you need to.
Yeah, I go back and forth about whether I like Civ 6's policy system better than Civ 4's civic system. I think both of them have very strong merits to them. But I definitely prefer what Civ 6 does in that regard compared to Civ 5, where like you just pick these trees and you have them for the rest of the game and you like never really have to think about them again. So I like that the civics in Civ 6 is something that you're constantly reconfiguring, so you do have to keep thinking about it all the time. Another thing that is name checked is diplomacy. He doesn't go into any specifics about why diplomacy is bad, but
we have plenty of those.
Diplomacy's not great, and it's never been great in any Civilization game. Every time a new Civ game is announced, I think a large portion of the community is like, "Oh, hopefully they'll get diplomacy right this time," and it never happens.
Rising Tide diplomacy was great.
Yeah, that was probably the best, and it's the one that no one ever played, and that everybody just immediately dismisses as a bad game. So, damn shame.
I know. I wish they would bring back pretty much every diplomacy part of that. Like the fear and respect system was great. We've been through this.
That game just needed more charismatic leaders that had more than like 2 lines of dialogue.
Give
No
them-
village was ever ruined by trade.
Adam Smith said.
And the Kotaku reviewer also name checks era scores, and this is one that I actually vehemently disagree with because I really like what the era score system does to the game because it gives the player an incentive to do things that they might not normally do, because it's very easy in a Civilization game, regardless of what civ you pick or what the starting conditions are, to just kind of play it the same way all the time. You build the same things at the start of the game, you explore in the same fashion, you put your districts in similar configurations, and the era scores, by giving you a lot of different little mini quests to do, gives you a reason to shake that up and do things a little bit differently and play around with more of the game's mechanics in order to unlock some of those era points or to be the first to some particular thing. And I think that's a very good system that should have some analog in every Civ game going forward.
I agree.
But apparently he just doesn't like it because it's numbers.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, there's a commenter under the article, actually, that brought up a valid point about, I don't think was addressed in this article, but endgame. Endgame is still grindy as heck.
Yeah, that's been a persistent issue in Civ games.
Yeah, point to me the Civ game that doesn't have a grindy endgame. I mean,
what is the solution?
Complaint.
Right, yeah, just like the diplomacy, right? That's a franchise problem, not a Civ 6 problem.
Yeah, but they did also bring up this thing. They want a game where the Roman Empire forms and then breaks up. No country should control 3 entire continents in 2023. It's like, yeah, there's a underlying social thing about how societies change and how it would be very hard to hold on to those for the entire length of time. And I know this is the gameplay versus realism thing maybe again, but once you get to a certain size, it is surprising that it doesn't break up, or you don't have to have cities try to go free. They're at the fringes of your empire more often.
Well, there's other ways if we were not.
There's loyalty, but yes.
Think of it this way: what if the United States did conquer all of South America in the 1800s, and then dealt with all of its racial issues at the beginning of the 1900s instead of later, and then all of a sudden everybody in the what we would call external territories, if it was happening now, were integrated into the regular state system like everything else? Maybe those countries wouldn't want to break away. We don't know. We don't have any situations like that.
If you assume all of those things happened, then yeah, but that's
But
that probably would have been hard to pull off.
It would have been hard to pull off, but so is every revolution that's ever happened. So
yeah, well, I just mean that the other nations in the world probably would have something to say.
And on the specific point of like the same civilization, shouldn't control massive swaths of land, for really large period of times. Humankind's method of addressing that was every era, your civilization changes to a different culture. So it does try to model the idea that these civilizations are not static entities through all of time. Their cultures do change and adapt as time goes on. And I would not be surprised at all if Civ 7 does something analogous. In fact, I would be very surprised if Civ 7 doesn't do something like that. Although I think Civ's focus on leaders would probably make it more likely that instead of changing civilizations like every era, like humankind does, you'd probably change leaders over the course of the game and get different abilities.
I don't see that happening because the amount of art required to make a leader is substantial. So if you have 18 civs, each with multiple leaders, you're talking as many leaders as were made for the entire game of Civ 6 before the base game comes out. So unless they go to something like static image things, which I highly doubt would happen because the leader heads are the most expressive part of Civ, I don't think that would happen. I think you'd be much more likely to end up with something like your country changes its name rather than its culture.
Or you can keep the same leader, but you could have each era, you have different strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah, that could happen too. Maybe each leader or each civilization has different powers for each era. That could happen too.
Like a Civ Rev type thing.
Oh, did Civ Rev do that already?
In Civ Rev, every nation had a different unique power for every era. The problem was there were only 4 eras.
Okay, well, there you go. Maybe they do that again.
And some of them overlapped, because there's only so much you can put into an Xbox 360. Anyway, I'm tired of this. Move on to the next topic. And yes, I say an idiot.
Harsh, man.
Another game that came out, very similar to Civ in some ways, but very different in others, is Age of Wonders 4. Came out on May 2nd, which was 4 days ago for us, and many days ago for you. If you don't know anything about the Age of Wonders series, it's basically 4X, but with Call to Power style battles and lots of magic and sci-fi stuff.
And Potato McWhiskey is addicted to it.
Of course he is, because it's a 4X game.
I mean, but he's like, he was talking about it, that he'd been playing it ahead of time. I've been wanting to talk about it for weeks, and he's like, you know why there's no Civ content right now? Because I've been playing this. Like, I think he's like almost literally no-lifing it.
That's fine. It's from what I have heard. From what I have heard from the people I have talked to who have played it, they're enjoying it. But these people also tend to be a little bit opinionated, and they make up their mind, and then all of a sudden it goes from 0 to 60, and then from 60 to 0. So who knows what the actual final landing point will be.
Yeah, well, like I said before, with these sorts of games, it really does take months or longer to actually figure out for sure whether you like the game or not, because of how big and complicated and varied they tend to be.
Yeah, I'm a little bit intrigued by it, but I want to sit back and watch the good people who are better than me at strategy things play it for a while first and see if they start finding the cracks in it. You know,
if you're familiar with what was the name of that game? The game that became that Elemental became the one that Derek Paxton made at Stardock. Anybody remember what that was? Do I have to look it up on Steam?
you might have
I
to
don't
look.
remember the title.
I remember one of them had.
Yeah, I know what you mean, but I can't think of it.
One of them had the subtitle Legendary Heroes, and that one wasn't very good, but the original was better. Oh, Steam has to install an update. Also, if you don't have the Steam beta client, some of the stuff that's coming is really cool. Let's see. Fallen Enchantress.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, because I put some good hours into that, and I've played the original Age of Wonders, like 1 and 2, back when they were originally out and such like that. So it's just like, I kind of know what I should expect from that, but is the gameplay gonna, I'm waiting and watching, basically. Although it does look good.
And some of us finally got Humankind in the last few weeks, so maybe we'll have some information about that too. Some of our opinions.
Does that include the expansion or just the vanilla game?
So far, just the vanilla game.
I was playing the expansion like a month or two ago, but didn't get as far into it as I would have liked.
Alright, let's go on to the next topic because the recording will be fine.
We have a poll for the leader pass. We're on Civ Fanatics, Zagangani. I'm terrible at pronouncing things, but they wanted to know what the 3 best leaders from the leader pass for you. They've got everyone listed in here, and who are our 3 leaders? Excuse me. Oh, Tokugawa, I'm not surprised because he's maybe slightly OP.
He's number 1.
Yeah, he's number 1. Yongle at number 2.
Pretty close behind.
The history rewriter himself.
Yeah, and then it's
Just 2
almost
votes.
yeah, and then I'm gonna call them tied because they're only 1 vote apart. But Ludwig II and Theodora are staying.
I just have to ask, who's Age of Steam Victoria? I forgot the T.
No, they mean Victoria.
Yeah, I know. I like to joke. Least popular is Varangian Herald, who's surprised.
Well, it's like slightly different flavored Herald. It's like,
Herald's already unpopular. And then Julius Caesar and Nadar Shah, Unifier King Shi Huang are all tied for second worst with 3 votes each.
It does seem as like it's a bit biased towards the more recent ones too. Like you play the old ones, you had your fun with them. Now you play these other ones, and you're like, ooh, shiny.
Well, the newest ones are the English ones, and I think the highest rated one of those is Age of Steam Victoria at 17% with 16 votes.
Oh, I guess I got my release order backwards.
I don't remember which pack Theodora was in. Was she in the Builders one? Because I know Ludwig was in release 5. Tokugawa was in release 2. Yongle was number 3.
Well, it could even be the other way around. That these are the ones that people have played the most with because they came out earlier, and maybe people haven't gotten around to playing the newest ones like Victoria and what was the other one in that pack? Elizabeth and Harold.
It could also be they're a little bit. Also, the ones that are a little popular are also ones that are kind of slightly OP. Like Tokugawa is a little ridiculous. I've seen videos for that. Theodora has a bunch of culture. Everybody seems to prefer Ludwig versus Frederick now for Germany.
Well, Frederick his ability has to do with the barbarians, and a lot of people don't play with barbarians on. Or was that a different Frederick?
I think in Civ 6 he has a city-state.
Yeah, he's all about
ability.
Yeah.
You're probably confusing him with Civ 5 Germany.
You're probably right.
I didn't realize that people turned Civ 6 barbs off that frequently.
I don't know if they do as much as they did in vanilla, because in vanilla it was ridiculous because all of a sudden horses on turn 5.
Well, just getting scouted in general before you could possibly kill a scout was obnoxious. But after that, then the system was pretty much fine. It was just that was the problem.
Yeah, when the barb camp spawns like 4 tiles from your capital on turn 2.
Yeah, like you start with 1 military unit, and no matter which side of your capital you put it on, even if you don't scout with it, you can still get scouted and not be able to to prevent a massive
Well, and
crushing of your economy early on.
because of the fact that barbarian camps spawn in the fog of war, it means it's much more likely that they're going to show up on the opposite side of your capital that you sent your 1 warrior to, because that's the side of the capital that isn't revealed by the unit's visibility.
Yes.
Yeah, it's basically a don't explore yet incentive.
Well, even if you didn't, though, it didn't matter. You could still get scouted and have no counterplay on the thing attacking you. So you would just like randomly have a significant hit to your early game for no reason. Like you could not do anything about it when it happened.
Yeah,
And I was not a fan of that.
And my recommendation is, with your initial scout, explore out in a really tight spiral around your capital so that you're never too far away if you have to beeline him back. Just don't send him out in a straight line forever, because you're just going to get yourself into trouble.
Well, you could defend an early barb attack as a consequence of getting scouted. The problem is just getting scouted and having stuff attacking you is a significant setback to your early game tempo, and that makes such a big difference in how you progress through the opening 50 turns that it's a bigger hit to you than a lot of micromanagement mistakes later on would be.
Yeah, if you already built your first couple improvements, they just pillage that, and if you haven't built them already, then you have to delay building them because you can't send your builder out into the field because they're just going to get eaten by the barbs.
Yeah, and then if you don't build builder or something like that, then you're also making an immediate concession. I didn't like how that was interacting with the game. They could have just done what they've done in previous titles and delayed the barbarians being a presence at all for a little bit. And then if you invested properly, you could stop them. And if you didn't, then they would cause problems. That's how they worked previously, and it worked fine. I don't know why they decided to screw you on turn 4.
Or make it so that the barb outposts just spawn with like a defending warrior instead of spawning with a scout, and they have to actually like produce their scout. So there's that extra buffer time between the
it's the same effect ultimately, is what I was saying.
Oh, but it at least pushes the time that the players have to, do something about it a little further back.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. As long as you have some ability to counterplay the barbs, then it's not an issue. You just need some time, not immediately scouted, before it's possible to build a second unit even. You get scouted, and that was obnoxious.
It sure was.
What are our opinions on the leaders? Do we think Tokugawa is the best, or do we think somebody else is?
Well, I have to shout out for Nzinga Mabande, because on paper I don't know if it looks as strong as it is, but she's popped up in a couple of the multiplayer games, and she's one of the ones, if you leave her alone, she's going to get too strong, because it's, at least on the game we had, her economy and everything, and she had a huge army. I'm like, where did this come from? We're all like that. Yeah, we can just leave her and not, like when Korea gets too strong, you're like, yeah, we'll just leave Korea. Never mind Korea.
Well, the other Congo leader also can get pretty strong too. He builds a really good economy.
Yeah, but something different with her, that she either does it stronger or faster or something.
Well,
I don't know.
She gets bonuses for being on the same continent, so. Although that might not actually be happening according to a topic that comes up a little bit later. Actually, it's the next topic, but we'll talk about that as soon as everybody else has had their say.
I do not have a strong opinion, unfortunately, on leaders yet.
Yeah, I don't care. I sometimes play deliberately bad leaders just because.
Yeah, I haven't had enough time with any of them to, other than having seen other people play Tokugawa and going, whoa, this is a little ridiculous.
I still pick Mansa for his laugh.
I'm glad they toned that down.
No, that was the wrong move. The only bad thing of that, though, is if you play a character like that, then you don't get to see it as other people experience it.
Yeah, the downsides to being your chosen leader is, you don't get to see their leader screens ever, their character animations, and you also don't get to listen to a lot of their music. Because once you meet other civs, the game starts playing their music instead of yours, and the only time you ever hear your music is like when you go into your own like leader menu that shows you what all your abilities are. So
is that
that's a
actually
shame.
What happens, or is it
Sometimes it is
just the luck of the draw, as it were.
Yeah, I'm not sure how the game chooses which music to play at any given time, but I always feel like I never get to hear my Civ's music once I meet other Civs.
There are things you can do to prompt it to switch, but yeah, I don't know the precise workings.
Yeah, I think like declaring a war or something like that might like immediately change which music is playing.
I like either of the new English leaders because I like being a Navy, and I also like playing England because I'm a weirdo.
You like being a Navy?
I like having a good Navy.
No, I like the first phrase. I will physically.
That's right. I want to be the
Anamorphic ship.
HMS Victory. Get out of my way.
All right, troops.
It's like
hop on the
Transformers. You
tracks.
just like turn from a human into a battleship, even on land, because you just friggin' crush people.
If
On
I
the spot.
became
Get wrecked.
If I became a battleship where I am right now, I would crush my entire town. So I think that's a bad idea.
You would defeat anybody in a fight.
Canus's stand-up routine begins with, "Boy, I just amphibiously invaded another continent, and boy, are my arms tired."
I
I don't know,
amphibiously
'cause he
invaded.
didn't have to use them because he was a battleship, and he didn't have arms at the time.
Can I be an Iowa class?
Well, you said in the whole Navy, so I mean, in principle, that means you could probably transform.
Oh,
into
can I be?
anything.
Can I be the Reagan era U.S. Navy with the 600 ships?
Apparently, fine.
It's a little bit bizarre that we had an actual battleship in service in the 1980s, but what are you gonna do? I guess. Really good for artillery strikes, because anything that it hits will blow up.
So circling back to Nzinga Mabande, I hope that's how you pronounce her name. Apparently, her AI is just broken. So this is a topic that was posted by user Infixo on Civ Fanatics titled, "Even a single wrong AI parameter may break the AI." Well, yeah, especially when that AI parameter is like directly related to their leader ability and the entire reason for that leader existing. Apparently, there's a line of XML that in her AI strategy that is for, it's the flag for any Civ to focus on settling on one continent, but apparently the continent selected is foreign continents instead of her home continent. So, and it has a very high flavoring, but it also says favored equals false. So people are wondering whether or not this means that she will settle on foreign continents or she will heavily disfavor settling on foreign continents. And from this player's or poster's playtesting, he thinks that it actually favors her settling on foreign continents.
I think he's right, because that would explain that one of the games where she's shown up in and she was putting cities all over the place. Like she put a city that was on way across the map for no good reason. I got forward settled by a little bit by her. Yeah, actually, that does that. I think that's correct, because
Well,
her
And the
cities were
screenshots
kind of
in the
scary.
thread are
There's
pretty
also
convincing.
screenshots.
Yeah,
Sorry.
personal experience, but also yes.
Yeah, I haven't done a whole lot of like looking into the XML or modding or anything, so I don't know how these different flags work. Like I think I get what this is supposed to mean, because like I said, it specifically mentions foreign continents, but then it says that whether or not it's favored is false. So it looks like what it's supposed to be doing is telling her not to settle on foreign continents, as opposed to telling her to settle on her home continent. But I wonder if maybe the actual code implementation of this is bugged and it's doing the opposite of what it's supposed to do. And I'm sorry if you hear I've got a baby on my lap, so he
That's
might
okay.
be giving some
Hi.
commentary as well.
We'll survive. But yeah, no, from my days as a humble code monkey, I am very familiar with things like this. Not on this scale, obviously, but I'm waving my hands like you can see it.
Yeah. Double negatives in your code is a very good way to introduce accidental logic bugs.
Yeah, and also, like, you only need one extra or erroneous plus or minus to screw things up as well. So, when you've got a game as complex as Civ with thousands and thousands of parameters, and you have to figure out why any particular thing is behaving badly, sometimes there's just not enough QA in the world to figure it out. Because not only do you have to find out that there is a problem, which requires pretty good awareness to figure out, hey, there's something wrong here if you've only played like 2 or 3 games, but you also have to figure out what's causing it to do this.
Right.
And don't worry, non-AI parameters can also break the game.
Yeah, I definitely think that this particular line of XML would have been cleaner if it would have said the item is home continent and favored is true. It would just be a lot easier to read, in my opinion.
I think it has more information that it's trying to convey because it's settle one continent, not settle continent. So it should be telling us that it wants, like it looks to me like it's saying, if you're going to settle one continent, we want you to settle your home continent, and the way it's doing that is by telling it to not settle on foreign continent.
Right.
Which is a weird way to implement.
Yeah, like I said, it's like a double negative, and that makes troubleshooting your logic a lot harder than it needs.
But that also looks to me like the kind of thing that would be like, oh, we set this parameter, or we created this parameter in the base game, and now we're trying to use it in a way that we hadn't foreseen, and now it looks weird.
Or you find out that this was never actually implemented correctly. Like we had these flags, but we didn't have any leaders that used it, so it never worked because we never tested it because we didn't have any leaders that used it, and now we are using it, and we didn't catch that it doesn't actually work properly.
Weird.
On the upside, though, if it is an issue with the XML, that should be like a super easy fix. In fact, I mean, players might even be able to go into their own XML files on their machine and potentially change it themselves. You just have to know what the proper value should be.
In the original post, the writer says that this was discovered while working on a new release for the Real Strategy mod, which I'm guessing will be a topic someday.
Yeah, so hypothetically, again, not knowing what all of their like enumerations and stuff are, if you went in and you just changed the item to say home continent or whatever is the actual value for that and change favored to true, this may work as intended.
Correct.
But I don't know, you're going to have to like try it and test it and make sure it doesn't crash the game or whatever, because I don't know what the actual intended values are supposed to be.
Well, what he did to actually make it behave normally was he changed the 120 to -20. So
yeah, that makes it sound to me like this is just bugged in the code implementation because it's doing the opposite of what it's supposed to be doing. Because looking at the XML, it looks like it should correctly do what it's trying to do. It's just doing it in a roundabout way.
Yeah, but somebody pushed a 1 instead of a minus. So this is called non-optimal programming. If you are learning to be a programmer, learn the way to do it properly and not just the way that you think is fastest.
Right, but what I'm saying also is that a negative value in this field seems like it would do the opposite of what's intended, because it would make you not want to not settle on foreign continents. So it would become like now it actually would be a double negative. So I think it's just the logic in the code is flipped.
It should have been a triple negative.
It's either that or it could be some kind of like arithmetic overflow sort of thing, kind of like with the old joke about Gandhi and nukes in the first civilization, where it would roll over.
That wasn't true.
Or something like that.
Yeah.
Like maybe the maximum value of this is supposed to be like 100, right? And they put it at 120 and it rolls back over to 20, which means it's a really low flavor for not settling on foreign continents. Who knows? I don't know.
I think we've hashed this long enough. Ready for the next topic, everybody?
Yeah, it's not our job to debug the games.
Just achieve negative maintenance and make more units.
No, this isn't Civ 4 or EU4 either.
Speaking of broken parameters in that game, there's a way you can mix transfer trade with with pirating, where you're pirating your own subject and somehow the game like completely glitches out and you get thousands of ducats.
Oh my
monthly.
gosh. That at least sounds like
Speaking of wrong parameters that break the game, while AI parameters can, that's not the only parameter that can break the game.
To be fair, that doesn't sound like something that would come up normally.
It's not something you could do accidentally. You have to like have your subject be the only thing in the node. It's not your home node. There's a few steps you have to go through. There's a reason it took this long to identify that exists.
How
But it's
long
still
has it
funny.
existed?
I don't know, at least a few months, but it might have been around since years. And just nobody, like, the pirating mechanic isn't that popular. People don't leave subjects lying around in uncontested trade nodes very frequently, because if it didn't give you thousands of ducats a month, that's not generally good gameplay. So yeah, I mean, it might have been in the game from close to the start, or at least from the start of when pirates were implemented as a player option, which is like more than 5 years at this point. Yeah, so the wish list for Civ 7 is to just put everything from EU4 into Civ 7.
No.
Nothing bad will happen
We should
at all.
We should specify that this is our May 2013 or May 2023 wish list, because we've talked about this subject before, and this one needs to be delineated individually. So we'll probably talk about this again before Civ 7 comes out, but here's our wish list as it stands right now.
Okay, well, I mean, the third topic started by Keely. Some of these just wouldn't be able to implement as is in Civ 6, but, maybe a different infrastructure around the game's mechanics would allow it. Things like district mutation or migration just wouldn't make sense in the way that pop currently grows in Civ 6, but who knows, right? In Civ 7 it could. Obviously, for me, it's going to be UI first, because that's been awful for the better part of a decade now, or more, really. Yeah, more. So, yeah, find somebody who knows how to make an AI and UI, well, AI too, but UI especially, and put them on Civ 7 so that we don't have the disgrace of the previous two Civ games.
Well, or better yet, a UX, more UX people, so that because just a UI person might go overboard. You need a UX designer as well to make sure that
pretty much they're close to hand in hand now. Like,
yeah, they
and they're used interchangeably for that reason. You're not going to have somebody who just looks at the user interface and doesn't care about the experience
What
anymore.
we need is somebody from the 90s who knows how to make a user interface to come back and...
There's no way. Like, there's people today who make good user interfaces. They're just not working on 4X games typically.
Well, it also doesn't help that there's a large push for minimalistic UIs now, which isn't really necessarily what you want in a big 4X game, because you want lots of information easily accessible.
Well, you could toggle that sort of stuff, though. So it's not like having a desire to limit information presented as an option is a bad thing. The problem is taking away the options of accessing information quickly and without hassle.
Yeah, or hiding it like 3 submenus deep into something.
Yeah, and there's just no excuse not to have keybinds and hotkeys, that kind of thing, in a game like this. It's just ridiculous.
One of the other ones on their list is a better Navy system, which also includes being able to go up rivers and things. But, just teaching the AI how to really use a Navy better would be great.
Teach them to use the Air Force and make them
that
use
too.
it. And make them use it.
Yeah, because they build it, they don't necessarily know how to use it. They'll build the boats, sure, but I don't get a literal armada coming at me to start taking out my coastal cities, which is what we as the players can do the AI so easily, or bring in a slew of air units and just bomb them down to the ground.
I think
Navy's going on rivers is interesting. I didn't think that was something that you could implement. However, I have seen Hearts of Iron modders manage to allow navies to go up rivers, which you certainly cannot do even a little bit in the base game. So apparently there are people out there who can figure out how to do this. And yeah, I guess one of them could be a dev in principle. That's an interesting idea.
I think in order to get better Navy support into the game, there would have to be a very large focus specifically on early game naval play. Because I think a big problem is that there's not really much of a reason to build an early game Navy. So you just don't have a navy in place when you get to the Age of Discovery, where you should have a navy. Everyone just has large land armies. So there's like almost no consideration. I think what they need is things like piracy and stuff like that, like sea barbarians, essentially, so that you have to build a navy early in the game in order to protect your coastal settlements.
Nah, you know what you need?
I think it's a mid-game problem, actually, because there's never any mid-game naval units. It's always galleys and triremes, and then the next new ship is the caravel at the.
It feels like you're going from. It feels like you're going from the Greeks, early Greek ships and Viking ships, straight up into the Age of Sail, and then straight into World War II battleships.
Well, that's kind of how the relevant
in real life,
naval combat worked out. But you know what you could do is you could take away the ability for units to embark without a boat.
Aww.
Troll. Well, it's sort of a troll, but sort of not. And this will come down to how much they're willing to mess with stacking, because it would be difficult to implement in a 1 unit per tile setting. But the ability for ships like that to transport and protect armies would make it very significant. The other thing is you want ships to be threatening to units in cities in the early game, otherwise they just won't be useful. However, that's not historically accurate at all. So there's a bit of a balancing act there. Like pre-canon ship battles were kind of a meme, but they happened for sure.
It was mostly boarding.
Yeah, and boarding on your terms rather than theirs.
Yeah, we don't get a lot of boarding or seizing prize ships, because that was a big thing.
But you also have some ridiculous interactions that would just not track the history, like how cities get the 2-tile firing. The idea that like a city in 200 BC
could fire that far.
Yeah, could meaningfully threaten boats.
You don't even have longbows. How can you fire this far?
Yeah, I mean, you could shoot like arrows onto the deck and hope you hit some of the sailors. And if the ship gets really, and I mean really close, like within 100 yards or so, maybe. But otherwise, no flipping way. Or what is every city going to have like the Archimedes like legendary mirror concentrating thing that just like lit ships on fire?
But it didn't work. They myth busted it.
They myth busted it several times.
Yeah.
Also they myth busted the ancient torpedoes thing.
In Civ 5 and 6, like every city might as well be using a working version of that in terms of the damage they can do to ships. And that does not help players' willingness to use ships. Because if you were not getting hammered by like bullcrap like super cannons in 200 BC, there would be a mobility incentive to using some of your army in the water to like get to quickly surround the city, to attack the city from directions you otherwise couldn't. You could actually besiege it more effectively or take it more effectively. If you were not getting absolutely hammered by the city itself, all these would be attractive options. Same thing if these boats were very strongly resistant to archers on land. Then you could just ignore a lot of those threats, and it would be a useful avenue for transporting troops.
Yeah,
and you could also do things with trade, and that might be the ticket to making Navy relevant in Civ 7.
Yeah, that's what I was going to get into.
Just have trade be a more relevant factor to water.
Yeah, some of the larger scale design issues that prevent navies from being a large factor in Civ games is, one, there's not much reason to go out onto the water. Like there's not very many resources on the water, at least not like right off the coast anyway. And there aren't like a lot of islands and island chains and stuff like that being generated. So we probably need maps that generate more island chains that are accessible earlier in the game, in order for there to be a reason to build boats and go out onto the water. And then there's also just like concepts that the game doesn't really do. Like there's not really a concept of a naval blockade or anything like that. Like I think in order to blockade a city, you would have to have naval units on the water, but also land units surrounding the city, because the game doesn't really separate, the water trade from the land trade, other than just in that you can plunder the individual trader units. So, like, you can't just block off the enemy ports and, damage or cripple their economy without also having a land force that can, land next to the city and close it off to land trade as well.
Civ 4 had a primitive version of this, actually. There was a blockade specifically order for ships that would block significant tiles set around the ship doing it.
Well,
And that was only helpful if the city in question that you were blockading also did not have a land connection through road or river to another city of the enemy empire. So, like, if you cut the roads and blockaded them, that city had no resources and it could get no trade routes at all. Now, how useful is that in Civ 4 in practice? Often not really. However, like, that system was in place. So, given different games mechanics surrounding it, it could have been very relevant. And it's certainly something Firaxis has done in the past.
And one of my favorite features from Civ 4 and the colonization game that was built on the Civ 4 engine was the idea that privateers had hidden nationality. So they...
Oh my goodness.
Sorry, the baby's a little upset. So when you built a privateer, it showed up to every other player as a barbarian unit, even though it was a Civ's unit, and you couldn't find out who owned it unless you sunk it. And this allowed players.
You could tell.
You could infer, but the game wouldn't reveal that unless you sunk the unit. But so this meant that you could actually harass other players, navies and trade and coastal resources without having to be at war, which put greater pressure on civilizations to have to build a navy in order to protect themselves from piracy, even during peacetime. And I really think that sort of thing needs to come back.
It's not my pirate ship, but you're the only one with chemistry. I don't know what you're talking about.
What do you mean? I just got a great general in the city of Washington.
Oh yeah, or they spawn a great admiral.
Oh yeah.
At peace.
At peace, and you're like, wait a minute.
Hey, it was my harbor, okay? My harbor just generated enough points for it. Come on, give me a break.
But I mean, you could tell this is a memorable trolley / fun mechanic.
Because even in multiplayer, you do it against the other human players. I don't know where that came from. What are you talking about?
Yes, in our quote-unquote co-op MP games, we would see some of this. Yes.
Ish.
Wait a minute. I thought chemistry was the forbidden tech because it's unlocked frigates.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Well, it's whichever tech it was. But
became available. They did not become available right at astronomy. Something near frigates unlocked them. There's only a very narrow window where you could use them unless you were harassing people who are backwards or ignored their naval technologies a lot.
Yeah, I have had a very memorable game of colonization once, and I think I've talked about it before on the show, where I was playing multiplayer with two other friends, and privateers were just constantly wrecking my shipping back to Europe, and I was complaining about it in the chat, and both of the other players also got on the chat to complain about barbarian privateers sinking all their stuff. So, and they did a good
chemistry.
They did a good enough job of complaining that the two of us did not immediately pick up on the fact that it was the third player's privateers that were doing this, and actually the barbarians.
If you want to hear more about privateer shenanigans, listen to Season 1's Christmas special, Girls Playing Civ, now available on YouTube.
And I definitely think that privateer mechanic not only should be brought back, but I think it should be available early in the game. It shouldn't just be Age of Sail privateers. There should probably be like a classical or medieval era Corsair unit that upgrades into the privateer, and maybe even a modern equivalent. I mean, I don't know if it would be like a submarine or what, but
it would be a speedboat.
Yeah, I was going to say something like that, because it could catch up to a larger ship and go, nope, ours now.
Yeah, submarines had... They weren't really the same idea, but they performed one function that you would want that was similar, which is like sinking civilian stuff that was useful to the enemy. But there was no illusions about the motivation or who was responsible for sinking those convoys. Yeah. So it wasn't the same as like a pirate per se, but it was attacking ships that were not very well armed by surprise, which is very pirate-like otherwise.
Or heck, maybe we don't even have to have dedicated Corsair or privateer units. Maybe there could just be like a writ of marquee promotion that you could give to any naval unit that converts it to a privateer unit with hidden nationality, and then you could actually have like privateer frigates and stuff like that going around.
With some diplomatic penalties if you're caught.
Yeah,
which requires a good diplomatic system. But hey, it's Civ 7, so we can finally have one, right?
Yeah, I mean that might be
Diplomacy,
overkill,
please.
but yeah, there should definitely
Diplomacy.
be. And what's frustrating too is Civ 6 in particular, like actually had diplomatic mechanics that would have made that work fairly well. Because there's the grievances thing, right? So there could maybe be a small chance that anytime a privateer takes actions against you, you can discover who it was. But for sure, if you sink it or capture it, you find out, and that should give you grievances towards that Civ, which you could use as a casus belli to actually declare a war. Like those mechanics didn't exist in Civ 4, so there wasn't really any downside or risk to using a privateer. I think there might have been like maybe a red diplomatic modifier, like you committed piracy against us or something like that.
I don't think so. I don't think the game had any in-game way of discerning who was responsible for using it.
Yeah,
The biggest risk to using privateers in Civ 4 is just that somebody would also tech chemistry and kill it.
yeah. As soon as frigates came out, your privateers were just all
Yeah, but they came with the same tech as frigates. So
yeah, at least
I just checked that a moment ago because I wasn't sure if I was remembering correctly that it's chemistry it is, which is the same tech for frigates.
yeah.
So if anybody was on board on the same tech as you, they could make a ship that was stronger and just immediately sink them.
Right. Yeah. So Civ 4, there was a very narrow window of opportunity in which you could use a privateers, and that was if you teched to chemistry first and were able to build enough of them to get them out before other players tech to chemistry. Because I also think you had to fresh build the privateers in Civ 4, but you could upgrade into frigates, which even further narrowed that window because you had to spend 5, 10, whatever turns building your privateers, but the other player could just instantly upgrade their not caravel, but their galleys or whatever into frigates as soon as they got the tech. So very, very narrow. Now in colonization, on the other hand, the window of opportunity for using privateers was pretty much the entire game because there was, naval parity for the entire game because it was about that very limited period of time. So I think having a classical or medieval privateer equivalent, like the aforementioned Corsair, would mean that you could commit piracy earlier in the game, which would then put that pressure on every Civ early in the game to build a navy, right, and actually send it out to find those Corsairs and deal with them. And then when you get into the middle and late game, there is actually a pre-existing navy that players can already utilize. So I think that would help a lot.
Hey, Mackie.
What?
You remember that naval game in Civ 4 from many years ago against we were teamed with Willow.
Is this where we all built a bunch of ships and like burned all their coastal cities to the ground?
Yep.
Yeah. Is this what he's going for? Yep.
So
surprise!
that's an example of like how it will be if the cities aren't hammering Navy. So this really does make a big difference. We deliberately went for for astronomy and our naval access early, and the other continent was racing way ahead of us with all the wonders and techs and everything. But we were at military parity, so the stuff we were landing with was the same as what they were defending with, but they didn't have a navy. So we just hung out in the fog of war in the water until we had enough troops in our galleons, and just in one turn we must have burned 12, 15 cities of the other teams, and they just quit on the spot.
Which version of Civ was this? This was
Civ 4.
Civ 4.
Civ 4. Yeah. So we went from losing the game to the game is over and we won in an instant. Basically, it was just such an amazing moment, and that came off the back of a navy. So it's not like this stuff can't happen in Civ, and I think Civ 4 was the closest time to it existing, because it was very difficult to defend all of your coastal cities from a stack on a navy. Like even if they knew we were coming, they would have probably resisted it better. But let's say that they knew it's coming. You can't put enough troops in one city to defend against 15 things coming off the water, because frigates can bombard cities down, so they wouldn't have any defenses. And you would have to need you would need 7-8 units to reliably defend that. You can't put 7-8 units in every single city when your opponent is taking all their units and putting them into that navy. You would need 4 times the army to defend successfully. It's an attacker advantage in a game that's usually a defender favored game by a lot. All of a sudden, if you have a navy advantage, you have an advantage as the attacker. That's huge.
In Civ 4, did the frigates have like an actual bombardability that you do from an adjacent tile, or did you just have to attack the city and it did collateral damage, but the frigate would take damage back?
Boats could not attack cities directly. In terms of bombardment, they worked like siege units, but they couldn't attack the city.
So
yeah,
they would be able to fire from adjacent without taking counter
Correct.
damage back. Okay.
There's nothing a city or land unit could do to damage a frigate at all. Period. Same for galleons. You couldn't hit them. Period. Air units could, but there's no unit in Civ 4 that like just moves around on land normally that could attack a boat.
Not even artillery.
Cities couldn't either. Yeah, no. Artillery still worked like melee. It had the collateral damage.
Right.
So yeah, even that couldn't shoot on boats, even though historically artillery probably could threaten boats.
Yeah, well, historically
that's batteries and stuff.
Yeah, historically that's what you would use. You'd have like a catapult or a trebuchet or a cannon or something that would be shooting out at the boats in the water. Now, whether that would be effective enough to stop leader armada is a totally different question. Probably not. But it would.
Well, in history, it was very difficult for boat cannons to threaten coastal batteries. Like it was. They did not have enough cannonballs or enough force to really threaten a coastal fort that was designed to hold off a fleet. So what happened is that the fleet would just have to stay out of range because the cannons fired from the fort could threaten them. And how much that mattered depended on where you were in the world. If it was a narrow strait, then that could be a real problem because you might have batteries on either side that'll just hose you. But if there's more water, then they'll just stay out of range.
And calling back to what I was talking about previously, when your fleet is staying out of range of those land-based guns, what it's doing is it's still blockading the port and preventing any merchant traffic from going in or out, which, as I was talking about earlier, is not really something that Civ models. So, like, your naval units are either attacking the cities or they're doing nothing. I mean, at least now there's the trader units that, are embarked that you can actually go and sink. But yeah, it's like you can plunder trade units, you can pillage their water improvements, or you can, attack the cities directly. There's like nothing else that you can do with your fleet other than those three things.
Well, again, Civ 4 did have the blockade mechanic. It just wasn't usually useful. That being said, if you fully blockaded an island country, it would cut their trade with the other nations. And that includes strategic resources. So if your target was trading for iron because they didn't have any, that might actually have a niche application because now they can't build their own frigates, which could be a problem. They also can't build like maces or knights or anything. So until they get the gunpowder for muskets or rifling for rifles, they would not be able to build anything but like longbows. So it would matter.
Be crippling.
Yeah, and you could do that even with like galleys and triremes in the early game. So if you're playing like an archipelago map, that blockade feature might actually come in handy because you could prevent them producing any threatening units just by blockading if they didn't have the resource. But there's also stuff like if you're fighting the AI, like your first move on declaration could be to sail your troops up to their iron mine or whatever, dump it onto it, which is very frequently a hill, and pillage it. And then you blockade so they can't trade for it with any other AI. Well, now they're hosed. Like, catapults have no trouble with archers, and they can't build anything but archers. So they can't actually attack you back. They can't trade for anything. You just win. Not that you really need to help on archipelago. Those are easy maps anyway. But that's an example of Navy being relevant in a Civ game. And all it takes is to not have ships be auto-countered.
Yeah, and the only counter to that is to already have had a Navy. So that also, again, puts pressure on the civs and the players to preemptively build a Navy for defensive purposes, as opposed to, waiting for someone to declare war. Oh, crap, they've got boats. Well, I should probably build some boats too.
Yep. It wasn't perfect, but it's the closest time we've had to Navy being relevant in a Civ game.
Remember, Navies in Civ 5 were fun, but not particularly defensible.
And it would also help to have other things like, more like inland seas and stuff like that, along the lines of like the Mediterranean, where you can actually have, ancient and classical and medieval conflicts that aren't out on the ocean because the ships can't go out onto the ocean.
You need more tiles on the maps.
Yeah, I think that's what it comes down to for that sort of stuff. When it comes to terrain, the ability to physically handle larger maps with more tiles and then just messing with your terrain generation algorithm so that you can get patterns like that. But until you have the capability of actually running games on maps like that, well, then it wouldn't make sense, because like an inland sea on a small map in Civ 5 is like a puddle, or like maybe a small lake or something. It's not gonna, you're gonna fit like 4 ships there, and they're not gonna be able to go around each other because it's just so space.
Right.
But if you scale that up, all of a sudden now we're talking. So it's possible.
I think someone had also mentioned the idea of navigable rivers. That might also help, because that does 2 things. One, that means that if there's a landlocked civ, but that landlocked civ is on a navigable river, they can potentially field a navy and send it out to the ocean. And 2, it means that even your inland cities are under threat from foreign navies. So you have to build your navy to protect the outlets to those rivers, to make sure that, you know, a fleet doesn't just sail up the river and, you know, hit your capital and completely bypass your coastal cities.
Now,
Yeah, and you would build this into trade too, because riverine transport was, well, it still is huge even today. But man, historically, transport over water was, to some extent, it was easier to move like hundreds of miles over water than to like march stuff, even like, you know, 50 miles over land. It was a big difference, and you could model that in the game for sure.
The
And if
states,
rivers,
the
oh, go ahead,
states, the states of the eastern United States are shaped in such a way as to allow them coastal and riverine transport. That's why there are notches in places you wouldn't expect in certain states, is because each state needed access to some area to ship their stuff.
Yeah, and if the game, if Civ 7 were to put a heavier emphasis on like the ability to blockade ports and on river-based trade, then that would also mean that, you know, you could potentially station a privateer unit or you know, a hostile naval unit at the mouth of a river and effectively be able to blockade every city inland that is sending trade up that river, because they can't get to the coast.
Yeah, unless somebody does something about it. But yeah, that would make Navy relevant.
There aren't a huge number of rivers that are big enough to have like thousands of miles of navigable rivers, but there are a few.
Yeah,
sure. And I think there's a few in Europe as well. Like I think the I want to say the Rhine was big enough for that. Like I think Vikings used to sail up and down that river to get inland and raid cities.
They did.
And there's also a river in England that the Vikings would sail up and down and attack inland settlements and monasteries.
Longboats were small enough that they could be sailed up most rivers that were longer than a couple hundred miles.
Yeah, and I could also see there being distinctions between, like, not just a binary between a navigable river and a not navigable river, but maybe even more of a gradient of sizes, where there's rivers that are big enough for ancient and classical units like galleys and longboats, but not big enough for like a frigate.
Well, remember that,
and definitely not big enough for a battleship.
Even after World War II, the primary port of England was still in London, in the River Thames. So until they really introduced the huge container ships in the 60s, a lot of shipping was still done in rivers. Nowadays, they can't do that because the containerized ships have a lot of ship space, and also the ships are also huge.
Yeah, but we didn't have examples of, like, you know, in World War II, German battleships sailing up the Thames and, you know, bombarding cities inland. So
mostly because the British Navy was in the way.
Well, that and the Air Force too. But I'm just saying, I'm not aware of any examples of like any modern ships, like destroyers or battleships or cruisers, going up rivers.
Well, I think they are capable of doing it. The problem is that if you are sailing into hostile waters, your enemy is probably not just going to let you.
Yeah.
And man,
right.
I can't think of a time that a ship would be easier to hit than in like a narrow river with artillery that just beelines on it.
Yeah, sailing.
Like, you know exactly where those boats are, and they don't have a lot of options to maneuver.
They can't turn around.
Naval bombers start coming around, or artillery starts shooting at them. Like, you would be screwed.
Right. And hopefully, if Civ 7 were to have navigable rivers, they address that sort of thing, so that sailing a battleship up a river is not like a super OP way of hitting a bunch of inland cities.
A ship the size of a battleship, a ship the size of a battleship will never, ever be able to sail up a river because
you just don't let them do it.
They are far too deep in the ship construction. I don't think any ship built after, or any ship made of metal that's built for the ocean would be able to easily sail up a river.
The only examples I can think of are like the ironclads in the American Civil War.
Yeah.
But that's ironclad, not necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, I think you just like
And I think
abstract it as anything like industrial or later as a navy. You just don't let that go in the water, in the rivers anymore.
There might be examples of submarines going up some rivers too, but I don't.
I doubt
I don't
it.
recall specifically.
Like you probably could, but that is a risky play.
Yeah.
I really doubt it because in order to do that, they would have to like that. Most rivers when they hit the ocean are not that deep because rivers when they reach oceans they spread out and become shallow and wide. So
and you have all the silt and mud and stuff that comes down that also complicates that. So
yeah, basically,
submarines, especially early submarines, spent most of their time on the surface, though. So it's not like they couldn't go into the river. It's just like, oh my gosh, you're already at pretty high risk at just at baseline as being a submarine crew, and now you're going to ask them to go there.
Yeah, so the river might be deep enough once you get actually into the river for a battleship or something like that, but first you have to get across the delta, and it's shallow, so I don't think that's going to work.
I mean, a sub probably could. A sub probably could sail over the delta, but that defeats the purpose of having a submarine. Like they're going to know where you are.
They're going to see you crossing the delta. Go, wait a minute.
And I think you'd have a really hard time staying off radar, or even just like people looking at you.
Yes.
I was gonna say, yeah. If anybody has radar, they're gonna see you, and also anybody looking into the water from the shore will probably also be able to see that you're there.
Yeah, it would not be a very subtle action for a ship that its life depends on it being undetectable.
Yeah,
but you could do it. I mean, you could probably sail a sub into your own river if you wanted to, but I think the game could get away with abstracting, just not putting post-industrial ships into the rivers. And it would work fine.
They might allow it just for this fact, or just to allow inland cities with navigable rivers to be able to build those ships and send them out to the ocean. But it should definitely be impractical to ever take any sort of offensive action up a river because, yeah, you would be a sitting target for every land-based unit along that river.
Yeah, I don't know how you model that, though. Because like, if you allow it, then you would need some kind of special mechanic that you can't do it in hostile borders or something. But even then, like, if you're fighting somebody who's really backwards, it might then be practical to use a post-industrial ship up a river. Like, if you took, like, the modern U.S. Navy and put it up against, like, a 1400s enemy or something, which can actually happen in Civ, because if you way out-tech somebody, well, okay, now your battleship or whatever that can barely turn in the water doesn't really care because the cannons can't damage it. You just go in and shoot them, fine. But
I'm telling you, battleships are too tall to go into a river.
Okay, fine. Send a destroyer in. Like, it's not like their cannons are going to threaten the destroyer.
You still have to turn it around, too.
I mean, you could probably even take the sub and sail that into the water and use its anti-air gun against the freaking, like, barely existing cannons on the coast of the 1400s sucker. And even that would be threatening.
Yeah.
The detective prince would be stupid.
I don't know if destroyers are deep enough to go, or shallow enough to go into rivers either. I don't know.
I do like the idea of a sub just like disregarding its stealth and just shooting at people on the coast because they can't shoot back.
We are the USS Ohio. We are a nuclear submarine. We have mounted a 50 cal machine gun on our cap, the thing that sticks out of the water when they're surfaced, and we're just going to shoot down anybody who comes at us, and we would still win the war.
Well, submarines did have guns and small small cannons on the top, and they would use that for sinking merchant ships so they wouldn't have to waste a torpedo. If a merchant ship was unescorted and didn't have any guns itself, like, you would just surface and you would shoot it with your deck-mounted machine gun or cannon. It's a small cannon, but against a merchant ship, it's more than adequate.
Yeah, against people who are centuries out of date, like, they're just dead.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you're talking about World War I, World War II era submarines, where they have maybe 20 torpedoes total, and they're out on duty for 6 months or something at a time.
I don't think it was 6 months at a time in World War II. I think it was 3 months at a time, if that.
But still, 20
Assuming he
torpedoes for 3
lived.
months is not a heck of a lot of torpedoes.
I heard that was one of the more dangerous positions you could be on out of anything.
Was a submarine, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, especially once the Allies, broke the Enigma code. I mean, it was those submarines were just sinking left and right.
I think that was true even for Allied subs, though.
Yeah.
You compared being on a submarine to most other positions you could be in the war. The submarine was more dangerous, unless you're literally storming the beach or something. Like in the first wave, that was probably more lethal. Because there were some pieces of soldiers doing tasks like that. It's some pieces of armies where basically nobody lives. But if you weren't something like that, then submarines were pretty dangerous. They were way up there.
Well, yeah, it's because you're out by yourself usually in hostile waters with no backup, and from a technical standpoint, the fact that your boat goes underwater introduces a lot more potential environmental hazards, right? Because you go too deep, you crush the ship, or you scrape against the ocean floor, or things like that. There's just a lot more that can go wrong beyond just being spotted and attacked by the enemy.
Yeah.
Being at sea is dangerous inherently. So
Right.
being under the sea is even worse.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you're effectively blind and all that stuff, and using your senses at that point is hazardous because your sonar pings can be picked up by other ships, right? And then they can triangulate your position as opposed to being up on the surface where it's visibility is visibility.
Yeah, and subs did spend most of their time on the surface, but there's problems with that too if you're in hostile territory, obviously. I think subs got sunk sometimes by naval bombers.
All the time.
Oh yeah, one of the most effective defenses against submarines was aircraft patrols.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because you'd see them.
Well, also
Sometimes
when they submerge,
they would just spot them, and then you're screwed too.
A lot of times when they're running submerged, they're close enough to the surface that they can still be seen from the air. So
yeah, well, usually it's that little periscope sticking out, right? You can still see that too. So
well, I think planes had radar as well. So
I don't think so. I don't think they had radar quite yet.
Really?
Well, and I don't think radar would be helpful for picking up a submerged submarine.
No, it wouldn't. But
now you're thinking of the more modern sensor planes and stuff that they can put up that could do that.
I thought they did get picked up sometimes if they're close.
Even with modern radar, you get low enough to the ground and you get into a blind spot where the radar can't pick you up
because of the waves, because of the spray. Yeah, I think during World War II, most of the radar was new, so it was probably building sized. Because you need computers to do it. I would imagine submarines would have sonar, but I don't think airplanes would have radar.
It was still a rather large installation at that point. It was only after things got miniaturized that you could have the. I keep calling them sensor planes, but there's a more proper.
I don't even think the large heavy bombers in World War II had radar at all. Even the bombers that dropped the atomic bombs, I don't think had radar.
They did not.
They had to visually spot still mostly.
Although we got to remember that the bombers that dropped the nuclear bombs were just regular bombers. There wasn't anything specially built about them.
Yeah, just put the nukes on them.
True. I mean, other than that they were big, heavy bombers. So
I think they were B-29s.
Yeah, something like that.
We have now talked about navies for 40 minutes.
Yeah. Well, apparently, this stuff is interesting enough that if you implement good mechanics for them into a Civ game, you will get at least some interest.
Well, one of those things that Civ has never done particularly well, so that makes it a particularly interesting topic because there's a lot of things that could be done that haven't been done.
It doesn't even have to be that specific. It just needs to be better.
Yeah, I think Civ 4 is the closest to making Navy relevant, but there was still a lot to be desired there.
More pirates. That's what I want. Just
Yarr.
Speaking of pirates, where's my Jolly Roger? This has been PolyCast episode 420. We are joined with the usual cast, myself, CanusAlbinus, got Makahlua.
I require some form of caffeination because all this Navy talk has made me thirsty.
TheMeInTeam.
I swear that privateer isn't mine.
And MegaBearsFan.
I am also quite thirsty, but ahoy there, mateys.
I am also thirsty, but my ice machine is still making ice, so I cannot get a drink yet.
Drink without ice.
I don't
In
drink
this
anything.
weather?
I don't drink anything but water, so
Water is ice.
yes, it is. But the ice is what makes it feel good when going down your throat.
Yeah, but that's not necessary. You can just drink water.
I've been talking for 2 hours too. I need coldness in my mouth.
Thirsty no more. Just drink regular room temperature water.
You prefer solid water?
I prefer a mixture of solid and liquid water.
All right, time to drink ice 3. Let's go.
Ah!
Oh dear.
It didn't work.
I
Civilization.
don't know how you get your hands on it without dying in the conditions required for it to exist.
Yeah, and
And
it's
it
not...
probably wouldn't stay ice 3 very long if you somehow transport it from those conditions, normal conditions for us.
Just make sure it's not Ice 9. Civilization 3, 4, 5, Beyond Earth, 6 sound clips. Copyright Take-Two Interactive. Copyright the Polycast at thepolycast.net.